That's the Americas, Europe, and Africa before 1492. And our learning goals for Chapter 1 listed here. These are throughout the textbook. And so I just copied them over to have them all in one place for you. So we're going to have these goals where you can locate on a map the major American civilizations before the arrival of the Spanish, discuss the cultural achievements of these civilizations, discuss the differences and similarities between lifestyles, religious practices, and customs among Native peoples. And even though your book often uses Native peoples, I just want to also say that I'll usually say Indigenous peoples instead of Native peoples. I think it's more politically correct, it's more accurate than the word Native implies. So I have a little problem with that word, but I may use them interchangeably because I'm working on those changes myself. Okay, describe the European societies that engaged in conversion, conquest, and commerce. And then discuss the motives for and mechanisms of early European exploration. And locate the major West African empires on a map. And then discuss the roles of Islam and Europe in the slave trade. So I remind you at the bottom, use these learning goals to help organize your notes from this chapter. So this would be like, these are like your key takeaways. And your textbook gives you lots of information around all of this, plus additional resources. But if you focus on these, that can help kind of keep it all organized for you. This picture is in the textbook, and I just want to spend a little bit of time analyzing it with you. So the title is in Europe Supported by Africa and America, and it's by artist William Blake from 1796. So he was an abolitionist. That means he was trying to help end slavery in America. And this depicts the interdependence of the 3 continents in the Atlantic world. So if you want to guess who's representing whom here, who would we talk about? So he says, or the text says, he places gold armbands on the Indian and African women. An Indian, I'll say, again, either Native American or Indigenous American person here. So that would probably be this woman. There's a gold armband on both of her arms. And then the African woman wearing gold bands on both of her arms. These symbolize their subjugation. Subjugation meaning that they are subjected to either enslavement or mistreatment or treated like lower forms of human beings. Okay, so that's important to look at, like, how is that maybe in some cases, and at least in the African woman's symbolization, how is that represented in her bondage? How is that gold band representing her bondage? And then what is different about the white woman? So the white woman, let's say that this is Europe in this case. So white Europe, Africa here, and America as in the indigenous Americans. Okay, so Europe is supported by both of them. And then this green strand here, that's, if in this case, Europe is holding on to it twice, or holding on to it plus holding on to the African woman's hand. What binds the 3 women together is this strand of tobacco. Okay, as in the crop that you'll be reading about or have read about in this chapter. What maybe are some other things that you see in the picture that represent how the white woman is Europe in this picture? What else is on her body that might represent, or what else about the African woman or the Native American woman do you notice? Something that ties in together with the title, Europe Supported by Africa and America. And what might William Blake be trying to say as an abolitionist and as an activist artist in this way. All right, so think about that for adding to the discussion. Or you could pursue it in a research project. This could be one of the pieces of art you could analyze for your research project and go into more detail about William Blake or maybe other works by him or similar types of work by abolitionists. Food for thought. All of these are in the textbook and the slides are provided, but I want to walk you through like when these are the map things to point out. So pay attention to the color coding. So we have the Aztec, the Maya, the Inca. In this form of the picture, it's not as clear where the Olmec are, but they were original to, I think maybe yours right there, it's real small in there, to Mesoamerica, the Mesoamerican civilizations in this part. Okay, so part of what you are trying to do in your learning goals is to be able to identify on a map where these civilizations were in North America, South America, as well as in Africa. So that's one of those. That would be North America, South America in this case. Okay, so I'm going to skip through some of the slides because you can read them in what's available in the module as well as in the textbook. This one I wanted to take you to, it is linked in the textbook. What's pretty cool about that is it actually is an exhibit in the British Museum on Peru. And though it's called Peru, A Journey in Time, they have some original and some replicas of Incan civilization, some of art, sculptures, and things like that are really cool. I think you should spend some time exploring that in the British Museum. So I'll share the link in the module. We go into Indigenous peoples of North America here. End of chapter 1, some discussion of the spread of Islam and slavery, and how Europe and Islam had roles in spreading slavery, the types of enslavement practices. So there's not just one type of enslavement practice. I have some key takeaways that I want to have for you on the next slide. Some of the major points I want you to be able to keep in mind is that slavery had been widespread in ancient history across multiple continents and was not a racial justification in ancient history. That changed later. But talking in ancient terms, ancient history, the Roman Empire, for example, and through the Middle Ages, that's what we mean. That did change in the U.S. later. It was not invented by Muslims, to be clear. And I also wanted to give you a little bit of vocabulary in case this needs clarification. So Islam, when we talk about Islam, that is the monotheistic religion. That's the religion people practice. And Muslim is the term used for a person who practices Islam. So you can keep that straight. So two terms around similar concept, but Islam is not the person. Muslim is the person. So by the time of the Ottoman Empire, and you can read more about that, and this is provided in a website I will point out to you, but it's also in the textbook. By the time of the Ottoman Empire, the majority of enslaved people were obtained by raiding in Africa. So that's not a selling, that's a raiding territories, and captured people were then enslaved. And then there's also, this website points to how documentation suggests that enslaved people throughout the Islamic world were mainly used for domestic and commercial purposes, as in like used in the home for serving someone in the house, and then also perhaps in labor for making things, helping out with trade and that kind of stuff. So they more about the role of Islam and slavery in Africa at this website, and it is provided. I can't click on it for you, but it is provided in the textbook towards the end of that section on the role of Islam and slavery in Africa. And also that part of the chapter will discuss Europe as well. This one more map shows the routes that were used in the course of the slave trade and the number of enslaved people who traveled each route. As those figures here show, most African slaves were bound for Brazil. So going here to Brazil and to the Caribbean. While West Africans made up the vast majority of the enslaved, the east coast of Africa too supplied slaves for the trade. So east coast over here. And so this is what we'll be getting into and looking at the African slave trade or Atlantic slave trade that will be coming up next time.